What's up, guys? What's going on? I'm Paul. This is Pauline Theology's daily devotional, man, and we're going through the book of Genesis. And if you've been following along with us, you know we are on the story of Joseph, and we're in the meat of the story. We've heard the coat of many colors, him getting thrown in the pit, fighting with his brothers, talking about his dreams, how he's going to be elevated above everybody. And then we got to the part where he got carried off to Egypt into slavery, and that he is being placed over the head of everything. And then how he fell again in a pit. We talked about that word, how he went from the pit from his brothers, and now the pit from this woman, Potiphar's wife. And then we also saw how he interpreted the dreams of the chief of the bakers and the chief of the cupbearers as they were placed in prison because they did something wrong. Interpret their dreams, and then they happen what they saw happen, and then they got and then he forgot about them. They left them in there. With 2 years later, Pharaoh's had these dreams, and so now what's going on now? If you haven't read through the passage, go ahead and check it out. It's Genesis 41 9 through 16, and stop the tape, read it, see what it's got to say, come back and we'll discuss it for questions. And if you have read it, let's go ahead and let's move into it, man. So the first question is, what's going on, what's actually happening in the passage that we're reading? In the passage that we're reading, we find that the cupbearer, I guess his memory comes back. His memory comes back. After hearing these things, I guess he remembered Joseph now. And so he tells Pharaoh about this guy. He's like, man, I know this kid, man, in prison right now. And when you threw us in there because we had done something wrong, I bet he's a little afraid to do this. So that got to take some courage on his part, because he's reminding Pharaoh of his transgression. But at the same time, his transgression must have not been as so great to have warranted him to be to die. He didn't die. He got placed back in his position. So I don't know. Anyway, when he goes up to Pharaoh and he tells him about this kid, he's like, man, this kid and this Hebrew kid, we had dreams when we were in jail, and he interpreted for us. And what happened, what he said came to pass, man. I was brought back to my original position, and the other guy was hung, So Pharaoh was like, okay, if this guy can interpret the dreams of these guys and it actually happened, I'm going to bring him up and see what's up, man. So he calls for him quickly and had him change his clothes, get shaved and all that stuff, and come before him. And when he comes before him, he says, man, I heard that you can interpret dreams, man. I got a dream, ain't nobody be able to figure it out, man. I heard you could figure them out. But guess what Joseph says? He says, nah, I can't do a thing, man. It ain't me. He says, but God has got an answer for you, and it'll be favorable. See, and that's what's it too. That brother said, not only is he going to interpret the dreams, but the dreams that you interpret are going to be favorable. Now, this is a little bit difficult. Like, what is Joseph saying here? Because does he know what's going on? Because he didn't know if the dream is favorable or not, Some believe that when he says favorable, is like you will have a favorable, what you desire will come to pass. That means that you're going to be able to interpret the dream, or that the dream's interpretation will be made known to you. Others think that when he says it, he's actually talking about not only that dreams will be interpreted, but that it'll go good for you. The interpretation of the dream will be for your benefit. It could be both, you never know. And another side note I didn't mention in the last episode I wanted to, is that when he was talking to his magicians and his wise men to figure out this what the dream was, some believe that Pharaoh believed his dream was just one dream, while all the magicians believed there were two dreams. And that's why he didn't believe their interpretation of the dreams. And that's why he was still distraught about having these dreams. And it's just a little thing that's in the Hebrew where it's the singular of dream whenever Pharaoh is talking about it, but when the magicians mention it, it's plural. So it's just a little way in which maybe the writer, the author, keys you in on how Pharaoh's a pretty wise cat, man, and that he has an understanding of what his dreams are, but he can't fully figure it out. Well, I mean, he can't barely figure it out. He just knows that they're probably one thing. And so as he asks his magicians and all of them see them as two separate dreams, then he knows that their interpretation ain't correct. And that's one way that he's going to see Joseph's interpretation and recognize that his is the real deal. But we'll see that later on. Anyway, what is this passage saying about God? Well, first off, that he is an all-wise God. Because if nobody else can figure out these things, and Joseph says, gives no credit to himself, and he says it's God who will answer this thing, then it's the author's way of saying that the way in which all these things are made known, anything is revealed, is by God. And then secondly, that he's above all gods. This is a one that is cool and unique, but it's also something that we need to carry ourselves as we go and we see man in application in the next questions. But this is showing that God is above all gods because Pharaoh is considered a god. He is God. In the Moses story, he's like, I don't know this guy's name. This guy ain't me. Who is he? Because he is seeing himself as God. He is a representation or an image of who God is on this planet. That's who Pharaoh is. But when Joseph mentions his God and says that he is the interpreter of dreams, then that is Joseph being rather bold to go before one God and say that another God is above you. That's pretty bold what Joseph is saying, in his saying that only God is the interpreter of these dreams. And if you can't interpret them, then obviously his God a little bit more better, a little bit more powerful, a little bit more wise, a little bit more knowledgeable. What is this saying about mankind? That we should be bold in our faith. See, just as Joseph was bold before Pharaoh and saying these things, we ourselves should be, as Christians, bold in our faith. To be able to say things that are hard and difficult in front of others who may not see them right. They may not see them as we see them. That it may be antagonistic against them when we say it. But if it's the truth and it's in love to help, because when Joseph says these things, he says it's favorable for you. So he's not doing this to just ridicule him and say, ha 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 ha, you're not the God that you thought you were. No. And I think sometimes that's how Christians are presented, and rightfully so, as we do those things. But that's not the way it should be done. It should be done because we are trying to bring shalom, trying to bring peace, trying to bring benefit, trying to bring positivity. And with positive comes the negative first sometimes. And we have to speak those things. So being bold in our faith is important. But also confident in our gifts of God. Because as he says these things, he says, man, I'm not the one who does it, but it's going to be done by the power of God. Like, there is not a reservation about him in the interpretation of the dream. He's like, it's going to be interpreted. It's just not by me. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get what you want, but I'm not the one that's going to do it. And so we should be bold in the gifts that God has given us. And we talked a little bit about trying to find those gifts. And man, I didn't put that in the link. I will have to do that. I'm sorry about that. But if you did find what your gift is, or if you were contemplating on what your gift is, I hope you found it, to figure out what it is that you can do so you can serve the Lord and then be confident in it. How do we apply these truths to our lives? Well, knowing that God is all wise and that he's above everything, and that we should be bold in our faith and confident in the gifts that he's given us, man. Then I ask the question, where is your faith lacking? What point or position in your life are you unsure of? Then find that solid ground in him, because you know that he knows what he's doing. You know that he's above everything. So let's find that spot, and then allow God to be the ground that is held strong, so that we can have faith and that we can walk on top of him, because he's the one who's faithful. And then tell somebody about Jesus today. Man, make it a point. Just make it a point today to go out and be a witness, to share the gospel. Share the gospel with somebody. I thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.